I touched on this a couple of times before in previous audios, but I think I'm going to go into a little bit more detail because I have mentioned certain scenarios where you have some people that are dependent on others to help get them through. And even though it's understandable, the thing is that people are looking at the person who's taking advantage instead of the people who are allowing them to take advantage. There are people that are codependent on others, but the people who are providing that support on an ongoing basis without even trying to address the issues or the problems, they're just as much, if not more, to blame. There's an old adage about a bad product. They say that the product is bad for people, but the product wouldn't be so bad if there wasn't such a demand for it. It's a matter of supply and demand. So, I mean, if you see a negative situation and you haven't done anything to try to change that into a positive situation and you're just feeding it, who's to blame? The person who's committing the wrong, or are you just supporting the fact and reinforcing that behavior? It's like you're rewarding bad behavior. Why would you do that? So I'm going to give you one scenario some of you might be able to relate, and maybe in future audios I might, do some more. Let's say that you have someone, okay, let's say it's a younger brother or sister, whatever the case may be. They haven't found themselves, they have a devil-may-care, reckless attitude about their life, and you're always putting on the super cape, coming in and covering for them. Well, 10 years later, they're doing the same thing. And see, you don't even realize that you're doing something wrong. You actually think you're doing something good because by you coming in and saving the day for them, you already know in the back of your mind that the direction that they were heading in, which was one of their many scenarios, it could have been worse. And if you hadn't saved them, they would have gotten into a worse predicament than they got into. But sometimes you got to let your behind hit the pavement. Sometimes people burn so many bridges in so many places so many times, and they have physically, financially, emotionally, and mentally exhausted people to the point where they're just like, you know what, even if I could help, I can't. I just don't have any more in me. And that's the truth. And then you have this other group of people that sit there and judge the people who won't help them. It's not that you don't love them, you do. It's just that you've done so much for so long in hopes that they would change their attitude that you just can't do anymore. Or it could be a situation where you want to do anymore, but you have to place your attention on a better and bigger situation in order to get that addressed. In other words, they just can't, you don't have room for them in your situation right now. You just don't have room. There's no room at the end. And either way you look at it, that person's going to look at you when you finally do get to that point where you can't do anything for you anymore. All of a sudden, you're the bad guy. And then you feel a certain type of way. You feel they're being ungrateful and whatever the situation is, they have an attitude towards you. They're being spoiled. But see, you're part of the reason why they're being spoiled. You contributed to that. So this is a situation where I've mentioned before that there are going to be times where you're going to be by yourself. You're not going to always have people around you all the time. And you're going to have to think for yourself and do for yourself. Now, common sense would think that all those times that person was trying to cover for you, that you actually learned a few things from them. But the majority of you who are that spoiled don't. You actually think in your mind that person is going to cover you forever. Not thinking about the fact that that person has a life. Not thinking about the fact that that person is human. That person could be past retirement and could die any day now. That person could be in a situation where they're hunting for a job and they might wind up leaving the area for opportunity. Or they could be getting married and starting a family where they go ahead and move on with their life. But no, you don't think about that. The only thing that's on your mind is that anytime something gets out of control because you don't want to deal with it or whatever, the minute you get into trouble, you know you have the security of picking up the phone or whatever and calling that person. And when they're gone, you don't know what to do. It's time to grow up. It's time to grow up. But as I stated before, it's not your fault. It's also the fault of the person who enabled this behavior. Maybe they think in their mind that they're always going to be around to cover you. And in both cases, you're both delusional. You're both humans. You both have flaws, and you both have lies. And to think that that other person is going to be around forever is just not being realistic. You know, people take for granted folks all the time, regardless of what the relationship is. There's sometimes some people take worse for granted of others than they do than some other people do. It just depends. So they figure, oh well, they'll always be around. And then the minute that you get comfortable in that position of that person being around, then they're taken away. And the reason for that is because you didn't try to take the time to learn anything from them. All you did was just take what they have to offer and kept it moving, assuming in your mind that you're always going to be covered, and never tried to learn to take care of anything for yourself. And to the person who keeps doing it for them, have you ever thought that once you're gone, nobody's going to be there to take up the slack? If you actually believe that somebody's going to step in your shoes and take all the crap and drop their whole world for this person who hasn't done anything all these years, you got another thought coming. So the time that you do have left, I suggest that you go ahead and start letting these people learn how to do for themselves. Let them fend for themselves, and let them learn to, not be so easy to pick up the phone and call you all the time, or get online, or text you, or hit you up. Make yourself less available. And I know it's going to hurt at first. It's going to hurt quite a bit. But see, it's for their own good, because you need to accept the fact that you might not be around all the time. And it might not even be a physical death. It could be a situation where you could just be out of the vicinity to do anything at that time. You might be in the hospital. You might be out of town. You might be on the way out of town. You might be dealing with another situation that's a little bit bigger than this person's trouble that they get into constantly. So there's going to be a time that they're going to have to grow up. There's nothing wrong with looking out for people. But if they're at the point where they feel they don't want to do anything for themselves, then they need to be by themselves for a little while, and they need to learn. Because you could take that same energy and you can help somebody who's really trying to do something for themselves. Just saying.